Hi everybody, welcome back to Flames Pyro Art for Beginners, and we're still looking at basic shading techniques. I wanted to do another little quick video in between the time lapse of creating this lotus flower, just to speak about the further away petals when we're doing the shading. If we see our image, as we can see, the flower goes further and further back, doesn't it? So we need to try and capture that with our shading. Here's like a flower that's, on the back side of the flower, which is here, this one. So this one is curling inwards. I'm using my extra small spear shader now. And so when we're looking to create depth with flowers, we have to start thinking about the things in the distance as well. All these flowers petals are like front on, but as we move further back with the image, these are facing us, these petals, but they're way off in the distance, and so we want to show that they're shaping back towards us, from afar. So like this central flower here is another one that's coming forward. I'm using the extra small spear shader, and I've got my heat setting at 2 at the minute, because when we're shading, we want to build our shading up slowly. We don't want to rush in and go too fast when you're building depth and shading up. It's all about taking your time, low heat, and so you can give yourself the opportunity to capture that perfect moment when you find the exact shading you're looking for. Even with something as simple as this lotus flower, you can go into so much depth and detail. There's just a world of opportunities for creating something magical just by shading techniques. Obviously, as this petal here goes, it's funneling down into the dark recess behind the middle of the flower. So at its base would be its darkest point, wouldn't it? Because that's going down into the recesses where you can't see any light. So simple little things like that, by just adding that extra bit of darkness here and there, can push things further back and give the illusion that you've got real depth to your flower or whatever project you're wood burning at the time. I just got so carried away with this flower yesterday and fell in love with trying to create something with real depth, and I didn't want to time lapse the whole thing because there were some important details that I could tell you about. So when we, like say, we want to curl a petal inwards, if you think about it, it'd be light, and then as it curls over, there would be this like shading, wouldn't there? Be a little area there where petals curling over, curling back into towards us. Right, so we can't get there all at once, because as we progress with the flower, all our tonal values will change. And here's another flower petal that's in the distance from us. And this one has just got some shading running along it is standing up. But there is some shade we can add to it. And this is obviously just a basic start of the shading. I may knock that pen down a little touch more. Remember, if the heat starts getting away from you, like it was doing to me then, it was adding a bit more heat than what I wanted. Just turn your dial down a touch and get your control back over the heat of the pen. Don't let the pen dictate to you where you go at, what speed you move at, you know, where your shading goes, how dark. You want to dictate to the pen what goes down on the wood. So by knocking the dial down, you then get your control back. Because with shading, it all has to be built up gradually. This petal here is curling. Inwards, because it's the reverse of this front one. Just so by basically starting to add shading, we can start changing the shape of the petals. I mean, you can do this just totally from imagination. You don't have to use reference photos. You can just open your mind and just experiment, just see where your mind takes you. That's one of the beauties of art. Just go where the mind wants to take you, and then you see what magic you come up with. And this is all like base layering of the shade, and everything will get darkened up as we go. The illusion you're trying to capture is showing something near, then a middle, and then things in the distance coming back at you. And it's all done by the depth of the shading that you add. Obviously, the further away will be a shade darker to push it further back. Remember as well, when you say, if you are doing a flower and you're shading, you've got to stay within the boundary edges of the petals, otherwise it won't look right. So always be careful and stick within the boundaries. And that started yesterday on this edge, because we've got a flower petal that's curling over in the, you can't see the underneath of it, but it's curling over, and then there's this petal that sits inside. And I was making a start yesterday and building the depth to show it sat further back. from the nearer, from this one and this one. And do that just by gradually, over time, working the wood. It may seem like you're not adding hardly any shading at all, but over time, as you keep layering up, the depth and the bulk and the volume will all of a sudden start to appear. So you never need to be in a rush with your pyrography art. Say, like we've got another example here now where this petal is like facing us there, but this one to the side has got a lip and it's got a bowl in it. So we can create that bowl effect. So if I move my board around, we just add a markers first. And just by adding this simple line, we'll all of a sudden start showing that this petal is, you know, there's a bowl shape to it. And obviously right in here, where you can still see this petal, it's going to be darker still. So if I'm using the extra small space shader at the minute so I can get into these tight spaces, I may need to get another pen that's even smaller so I can get right and tight to each petal. Right down in the bottom is where you want that darkness. To show there is like depth going on. It's not a flat object. And by having that heat low, you can work your way to the desired depth of shading that you're looking for. And I will shade this up so it gives it the bowl effect, because this is going to be its front sort of lip coming up here. But then it all falls away. So I'm just pulling my strokes straight down at the minute because I'm just showing that this area is in the darker place. Moving my strokes in the shape I want to capture. But you could say that all along here where this front of this bowl is, the front of this, you know, the petal, all inside there is going to be darker. So in effect, just by adding that dark line, you could then rub out the graphite of the edge. There's a bit more yet to rub out, but we've got our edge there. We can see it now. We know where we're working to. And this is our outer part of this one. So we'll add some shading to the back of it. And gradually, as you go and you start building these like round from the edges of the petals, you start taking out your graphite lines and you can start darkening everything up then. I can erase that now because I know where that petal's going, and the shape that I want to create with that, so I can remove a lot of the graphite. Now this petal's coming from way underneath, so here at the bottom of it has got to be the darkest point to show it's at its deepest. Again, we're not rushing there, I haven't turned the heat up. Because this petal is shade, we're not seeing any of the inside of the bowl. This has got to be shaped. But you can add like the veins of the colour as well, which will help with your shape, you know, with your shaping. If you look at a flower petal, they'll have like streaks of colour in them, like this one. Just by adding lines, you can start showing things, you know, curling over. And here at the centre of the flower, there's a shadow from this petal being cast. Remember, this is still its own individual petal that's going to the centre. So everything's like curling in towards that middle point from this side. and behind here there was one more petal. We'll negative burn round that in a minute, because this one's facing us, this petal here. We're just at this point, see, we're just trying to get a feel for the shapes and the shades and the curls of each petal. So you jump around a lot, and you know, as you work one thing, you'll see, oh, that doesn't look quite right, so then you can go back and adjust it a little darker. And by having that low heat, you're still leaving yourself room and opportunity to make changes as you go. So that was just a little brief interlude in the time-lapsing that I just wanted to share with you, that as you're working, say, a flower, you're concentrating on the front, but then there's also, you have to think about the far reaches of the flower to give it that depth. And shading is all just about building up layers and then shading at different, like, depths of, you know, colour, sepia. By darker in certain places, lighter in others, will start giving an effect. That there's actually, you know, a real good detail and depth and volume to your flower, instead of just being something flat. So we'll go back to the time lapsing anyway now. I just wanted to briefly touch on the far end of the flower, and I'll keep working on it for a while, and then when another thing comes up that we need to think about, I will add another little video in amongst the time lapsing. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope you maybe burning along with this lotus flower and practice your shading techniques. Remember, keep your heat low, build your way there, don't get there all at once. There's patience involved in creating at depth and more realism. You know, it's not going to be a half-an-hour project. It takes time and patience to get there, but you will get there. And then when you finish, you look at a piece of art you've done and you'll be so proud, and you think, wow, look at the depth and things I've captured there, and it'll be magic. Okay, so happy burning, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I will switch now back to time lapse. Take care for now. Bye.